What's up guys, and welcome back. We have another awesome Switch 2 video today, and first of all I want to thank you all for your support of this channel. It's been quite a ride with Switch 2 and I really enjoyed covering all the nuances of the console, and of course Cyberpunk 2077 was the most covered game we had on the channel. Thousands and thousands of views, thousands of comments. You guys have been just really supportive, and a lot of wins for this channel versus sites like Digital Foundry. We've been basically correct on everything we've covered here before they actually had to cover it, and we have more evidence here today about Switch 2, and including its graphical performance versus Xbox Series S. Confirmation from a developer that again proves that we were right about Switch 2 in terms of its processing power. And I say we because you guys are every bit as much as important as what I put out, because you support me in this content. So I do want to thank you guys. Of course, a lot of it's speculation, but the speculation that we have been covering has been correct. So big shout out to you guys and your support of this channel and of me personally. I really want to thank you very, very much. And a quick note on the footage I'm showing in this video, it's all going to be of Dogtown from Phantom Liberty, the expansion of Cyberpunk 2077 running on Switch 2. And the reason why we're showing it is because of what Digital Foundry covered in their analysis of the Switch 2 version, and we'll get to that in a bit. But first of all, we're going to talk about the power range of the Switch 2, which has been a huge topic for debate and discussion about where the power of the console lies. Is it more along the lines of a PS4, PS4 Pro, or an Xbox Series S? And take a look at what I said about this back when the launch of Doom the Dark Ages came out back in May. Here's what I said in regards to a direct question about where the power range of the Switch 2 is versus the other consoles. Almar Musa, is Switch docked the same as PS4 Pro? No, it's a completely different architecture. Not only that, but the PS4 Pro was limited to a very slow storage system, using an HDD hard drive, which was like 80 megabytes per second read speeds. Switch 2 is like 10 times faster than that for its storage memory. You literally can't compare the PS4 Pro to the Switch 2. Plus, PS4 Pro doesn't have ray tracing capability. Switch 2 does. It's completely different hardware, different type of food. Will be the most comparable? Probably the Xbox Series S, to be honest with you. Literally exactly what people have been saying that are not Digital Foundry. Probably the most comparable console is the Xbox Series S as far as what you're going to be getting. So in regards to that, we have a developer, Koei Tecmo, who is bringing Wild Hearts S to the Switch 2, and they were asked directly by WCCF Tech regarding, in terms of raw computing power, is it closer regarding Switch 2 to the PS4 or to the Xbox Series S? And they said there are a lot of characteristics when it comes to raw computing power, so it's difficult to generalize, but I think it can be thought as closer to the Xbox Series S. So there you have it, developer themselves saying that the Switch 2 is closer to an Xbox Series S in computing power, and I agree with that, and I always agreed with that. And the reason is because basically the Switch 2 has hardware-based ray tracing, and it has a much faster storage capability with UFS storage, which seems to be a range of about 1 gigabytes per second or so in terms of what its read speeds are, and that's far faster than the PS4. Yes, it's a little bit slower than the PS5 in terms of its read speeds for the hard drive, but in terms of its actual specs, having an NVIDIA-based GPU with DLSS and ray tracing capability, tensor cores, and pretty much being a more modern chip based on the Ampere and Lovelace architectures, we confirmed that it was using a hybrid of sorts of the architectures of Ampere and Lovelace and how it was designed. Yes, the cores are Ampere-based, but the design of the chip is Lovelace-based. So this is a very customized, very special Nintendo Switch 2 GPU that's inside the console, and we know that the ARM-based CPU is actually punching above its weight in consideration of the mobile devices that it supports. So yes, this is a very capable console, and as you can see from the footage and from the results from these games, yeah, the Switch 2 is pretty darn impressive, especially for a portable device. In fact, it is the most technologically advanced portable device I've ever seen personally, People may argue that other portable PCs are more advanced, and they may technically have more in terms of teraflops, but the actual performance and what we're seeing on screen, the Switch 2 definitely is the most impressive device I've ever seen that you can take on the go. So all that talk of the Switch 2 being like a PlayStation 4, I think we can put that out the window, and we can put it more in line with the Xbox Series S, basically due to what the developer has said and from the visual things that we're seeing from the games. We had Digital Foundry do their analysis of the game, and they brought out some very interesting things about the comparisons of graphics. And yes, we were right yet again that the Xbox Series S version of Cyberpunk 2077 is using lower quality textures versus the Switch 2 version, and they showed the proof right here in their video. And the Switch 2 version of Cyberpunk is using the PS5 preset for its textures, and yet again, this is something we brought out in a video previously, that it looked like the Switch 2 version was actually closer to the PS5 in terms of its image quality and texture detail. And yeah, it looks like we were correct. Digital Foundry, which has access to all the consoles, and I don't, so I couldn't actually do this type of comparison, but they have access to all the consoles, and this type of comparison is what I do like Digital Foundry for, because when they actually show the visual examples, then you know which one is better, and you can't just take guesses, because they are actually showing you from the Xbox Series S, PS4, Switch 2, and PS5 that the Switch 2 version is in fact using the PS5 version's texture detail. And you have another example right here. Xbox Series S is a little bit better than PS4, but the Switch 2 is a lot better than Xbox Series S in terms of its texture detail, and of course, yet again, as we can see, it's a match for PS5. So that is extremely impressive stuff, and basically it's not something that many people expected, including myself. I thought at least it'll be about on par with the Xbox Series S in terms of texture quality. I did actually think it was going to have better image quality since the beginning, but I wasn't sure about texture quality. Image quality, yes, I did expect it to have better image quality due to DLSS, but wow, texture quality is something I wasn't exactly expecting per se, even though it does have better RAM or more RAM than the Xbox Series S. It wasn't 100% sure that it was actually going to have better textures as well, and sure enough, it sure did. And the Switch 2 version has better reflections than the Xbox Series S, higher resolution reflections due to DLSS cleaning up the artifacts that Xbox Series S has. If you look at it in motion, you can see that the Xbox Series S version of this game has artifacts in its reflections. And interestingly enough, too, if you look here, there's actually ghosting that's present in the Xbox Series S version that they didn't bring out, versus the Switch 2 version, which doesn't have any ghosting really whatsoever on cars, for example. You see the ghosting image of the car right here in Xbox Series S, and that is due to FSR being a much worse image upscaler than DLSS, and it's not actually able to correct things like ghosting, for example. So huge wins for Switch 2. Like I said, this is the most impressive portable device I've ever seen, so definitely something to keep an eye on going forward for Switch 2 games. It looks like the Switch 2 will be able to produce games that look better than Xbox Series S, but yes, quite possibly they may not run better. They may actually run a little bit worse sometimes due to the CPU limitations of Switch 2. And interestingly enough, there's also shadows though that were downgraded for the Switch 2 version, even versus PS4 in outside areas. For cascaded shadows, the Switch 2 version is using a lower quality cascade shadow than all the versions of the game, including PS4, which is interesting, right? Now, you may think that, well, aren't shadows GPU related? But when I did some research on the Red Engine, which powers Cyberpunk 2077, I found out that cascaded shadows actually uses a lot of CPU resources, which makes sense as to why they would have to downgrade it for the Switch 2 version, because the Switch 2 CPU is ARM based, and this is the first time that Cyberpunk 2077 has ever been ported to an ARM based CPU. So some cuts had to be made, and it looks like cascaded shadows were one of them. This game was built for x86 architectures, including PS4, Xbox Series S, and PS5. They're all x86. So maybe, just maybe, this aspect may have been difficult for an ARM processor to produce. But yeah, the CPU does have to draw the shadow there, and it has to actually calculate the shadow distance for the cascaded shadows to work with the sun casting light and how shadows need to adjust due to the light of the sun. Yes, it's not ray tracing, but the Cascade shadow effect gives a much more realistic look to how shadows are cast by light, and they're different than just using static shadows or pre-baked shadows. So yeah, Switch 2 uses a lower quality aspect for its shadow casting and its shadow cascades, but it does have higher quality shadows than the PS4 version in indoor environments, but the Xbox Series S version does still have better indoor shadows as well than Switch 2. And on top of that, the NPCs and crowd density is lower on the Switch 2 version than the Xbox Series S, yet again likely due to the CPU limitations of ARM. But overall, as we brought out in a previous video, this is a much better CPU than the PS4 on Switch 2. And I do think as time goes on, the Nintendo Switch 2 dev kit will update and we'll be able to be using more resources for both the CPU and for the RAM. Likely another gigabyte of RAM will be freed up, and better utilization of the CPU will be readied for developers to take more advantage of what the ARM cores can produce for Switch 2. This should in no way be seen as the limit of what Switch 2 can do for its CPU. This is a launch game and was ported from x86 with Cyberpunk 2077, a game that was made from the ground up for x86 CPUs. I would say this is an extremely impressive result for Switch 2. It didn't stop there. Digital Foundry went on to talk about problems with the performance of the Switch 2 version of Cyberpunk 2077 in the Phantom Liberty aspect of the game, the DLC, and in Dogtown. Now, we did an hour-and-a-half playthrough on this channel showing all the footage from the intro section of Phantom Liberty all the way until that first robot boss fight with that spider-like boss, which was really done well. And as you saw from the footage that I showed from the hour-and-a-half of gameplay, and on my second channel, I have almost 30 minutes of gameplay from Dogtown with all kinds of different combat scenarios in the open world, and the game ran just fine pretty much for the most part. Yeah, there was some drops in the frame rate when you're driving around in Dogtown, and that is worse than the base game. That is definitely a fact. It is more demanding than the base game in Dogtown, but it is perfectly playable. And if you're not driving around, you're just walking around and running around doing combat things in the open world, the game still runs fine on the Switch 2, even in the Phantom Liberty areas. Now, if you're playing the story aspects of Phantom Liberty, it runs even better because those are curated parts of the game, and a lot of that is scripted, and you're not dealing with a random open world like you are in Dogtown outside of the story missions. So if you're just playing Phantom Liberty on Switch 2 and you're going for the story, the game is going to hit its performance targets for the most part in Phantom Liberty. It's in those open world sections that you go off the beaten path. Sometimes they will have a few drops here and there, but as you can see from the footage I'm showing here, I'm having a great time in Dogtown. I'm doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and I'm having lots of fun with the mouse controls too, which I'll talk about as well. I do have some mouse Joy-Con grips that I'm trying out, but I'll likely do a separate video on that because I have a few different mouse Joy-Con grips that I'm going to be trying out, and I don't want to give you too many impressions too soon before I actually test them all, but so far so good. But getting back to what Digital Foundry said about Phantom Liberty and its performance, they only showed the first part of the game here, and they didn't talk about anything or show any footage from the later parts of Phantom Liberty. They didn't show any footage of later story missions. So I don't think from this footage that they even played past this opening part and they judged it on this opening area, which does drop frames. But after you're done with that part and you come back to this area later in the game pretty much runs fine. And I have all the footage provided from the Switch 2 directly on these channels. I have around 14 hours of footage or so of this game running on Switch 2. You can take a look at all the footage I have in all my videos and judge for yourself to see if this game actually runs well enough for you to play it. But in my experience, again, I'm a PC gamer. I really like 60 frames and above. From my experience with this so far, I have logged in nearly 60 hours of gameplay on the Switch 2 version of Cyberpunk 2077. In my personal opinion, I think this game plays great. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's not a perfect frame rate. I would love for it to be 60 frames, but it's perfectly playable and very enjoyable and very impressive on Switch 2. So I'm having a blast with this game. I'm really impressed with it. I hope you guys are enjoying it as well. For those of you who are playing it, let me know in the comment section, though, of course, what you think about Cyberpunk 2077 on Switch 2, and are you having fun as well? But that's not all about Cyberpunk 2077 on Switch 2. We also have confirmed information that Cyberpunk 2077 on Switch 2 is the #2 best-selling physical game on the Switch 2, right behind Mario Kart World in the United States. This is based on Matt from Circana, who does the monthly sales reports. And of course, we know the Switch 2 is the biggest selling, fastest selling console of all time. Over 3.5 million consoles sold in its first launch week. But to go along with that, Cyberpunk on Switch 2 is the second best selling game behind Mario Kart, which is amazing. And I did a post on X about this, talking about it. And guess who responded to me? The director of Cyberpunk 2077, or one of the directors, Powell Sasko. He said, "Thank you for checking our game, Choomers." And I've met Powell at E3 2019. He was one of the guys who was actually demoing Cyberpunk 2077 at E3 in behind closed door sessions for a hands-off view of the game at E3. And he's a very nice guy, and I definitely want to thank him for making this happen on Switch 2, and especially for such an early launch game on Switch 2, it shows a massive potential of where we're going with the console. It's only going to get better the more optimization and more resources that become available for Switch 2 and for developers. This is a very, very early example, but a sign of great things to come for the Switch 2, guys. So are you excited? I know I am. Thank you all so much for coming and supporting the channel. Like I said, please hit the like button if you enjoyed this content, and I'll see you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.